Hello and welcome to Coronavirus Report. This is our weekly 30-minute update trying to give you a digest of what we know and what we found out during the past 7 days with respect to the coronavirus. I'm here with Pastor Stephen Bohr, the president and speaker for Secrets Unsealed SUMtv. Pastor, good to have you here.
It's good to see you, CA. Also, Dr. Teske.
Yeah, our resource person is Dr. Milton Teske. He is the health officer for Kings County, just south of here, and he's also the chairman of the board for this very fine ministry. So we are doubly blessed to have a person who is in touch with the CDC, getting the latest information, and who just happens to be chairman of the board for Secrets Unsealed and SUMtv. So, Doctor, good to have you here.
It's good to be here again.
And I'm C.A. Murray. We are trying each week to give you some of the highs, the lows, the goods, the bads, the ugly, whatever comes up, whatever science is finding, whatever the good doctor has to share with us, we are ready and willing to ask and hear, because he has a lot to say. We have a lot of questions. Praise God, he has a lot of answers. So it's good to have him here. Pastor Bohr, I know you've got some questions. I have some. The doctor has some things that are on his heart, but I think we'll lead off with you and let you start out.
Okay, I have a question regarding origins. It seems to me like if you're going to learn from a pandemic, it would be helpful to know where it started and how it started. And there's a lot of theories out there about how the coronavirus got started. One is that somebody ate a bat and was transferred from the animal to the person, then from person to person. And recently I've been noticing on the news that there's a lot of talk about perhaps careless act in a lab in the Wuhan. And I remember over a month ago, when you gave a lecture on the coronavirus, you mentioned that you thought that that might be what happened. So is there any update on that? I know it's a difficult question to answer.
This is definitely a controversial area in the world today politically because of the implications of that. But, you know, exactly where it came from, how it came to be, and how it turned into this pandemic, you know, the first story was, yeah, it came from bats and eating bat soup from these wet markets in Wuhan, China. Then they felt, well, it came from bats and went from bats to snakes, and from eating the snakes, and then from bats to pangolins, and it was the pangolins then that made it to the human jump there. All of that is a little bit far-fetched when you start to look at some of the details on it there. The latest one, as you mentioned, they're putting out there is the connection with the Wuhan Virology Institute, which is China's only BSL-4, which is a biosafety level 4 lab. We have quite a number of them here in the U.S. They have this one in Wuhan, which is capable of handling really dangerous viruses, Ebola, SARS, you know, that type of thing. And so that would certainly be a place, okay, yeah, they're doing this kind of stuff there. When you start to say, okay, well, they were doing research on bats, and somehow one of the lab workers got it from the bat and it got out in the community, maybe that's so. But, you know, when we start to look at some of the genetic sequencing in there, there are a number of scientists that are pointing out now that this didn't just evolve. It doesn't bear the hallmarks of natural genetic evolution. Viruses evolve, they change, they mutate, and quite rapidly so. And that's well known, and they follow through, and they've got databases of all of these different virus genomes and show which ones, what changed where, and then it went to here, and then this one changed to this. That's quite a large, you know, field of study there. And this doesn't seem to fit those patterns. It goes from here and doesn't have any steps, and suddenly it's way over here, which has all the hallmarks of this is something somebody made.
Has it mutated?
There have been some mutations that have actually been measured since it came out. Viruses do that. But where it came from in the first place, which was a question you asked about origins, didn't seem to fit that picture as you start to look at it. You know, today we have the technology to cut things, insert things, we can make up a code and take pieces and splice them all together and make whatever we want now. It's sort of like Legos. I mean, just get the pieces and put them all together and you can make anything you want. The problem is when you start doing really evil things like making viruses with, you know, what they call gain of function. Well, the gain of function they're talking about is they're making it more infective, more infectious, more virulent, more, you know, evil in the terms of the disease causing severe infections, more destruction. We talked about last time about how this has the ability to attack immune cells, which none of the coronaviruses before this COVID-19 were able to do. And what's different, this virus, the genome, is exactly identical to the SARS virus, except they're finding that in the spike protein genome for building those proteins that make that little spike that it attaches and infects with, there's several inclusion sequences. And it's like you just cut the genetic code, spliced in a little piece, and put it back together with this little pieces. And there's 4 little parts in there. And there was one study that came out that showed those 4 parts were exactly identical to parts of an HIV-1 virus. In other words, somebody was taking pieces from here and putting them in here. And while they're different places in the code, when you make a protein based on that code and it folds in its various shape to make the spike protein, all of those little pieces of the fold actually come up right together on the very tip of the spike. In other words, they're putting those pieces there right where they're going to attack and attach and, you know, have a function there. And that's how they build in this gain of function. So, you know, as I look at the various theories out there as to, you know, the origin of this, being a man-made origin, this is something that was spliced together, put together intentionally in these pieces for a certain reason, seems quite obvious.
So does the splicing make it more difficult to develop a vaccine?
Not necessarily. What makes a vaccine more difficult to develop is all the little mutations that it keeps doing spontaneously on its own. And most little mutations don't change anything as far as its infectivity or as, you know, these little, you know, you change a bump here and a bump there and it still basically works the same. You know, somebody had to intentionally put these pieces in the right place to make a specific change in a certain place. But these other little mutations, as they keep coming, well, you make a vaccine and then it mutates a little bit. Well, now this vaccine doesn't work and now we need to. We see this every year with the influenza vaccines. You know, there's all of these, the influenza viruses, which are similar in some ways. They have the envelope around them like a SARS, you know, or a COVID virus does. But it's always changing. It's mutating, changing. And so every year they have to come up with a new vaccine. Well, now, which version are they going to make it on? Well, the epidemiologists get together in a room and they look at all of the surveillance data from the past year, from here, as well as from South America and other places. And they all sit together and say, well, we think the most likely strain to flare up this year is this. And they'll put 3 or 4 best guesses as to what's going to come next. And that's what's going to be in the flu shot for the next year. And so then they're saying, well, now if that virus starts to come around, yeah, you're protected because they guessed right. But if it's a different one, well, then it's probably not going to work for you.
Will it help? I mean, if it doesn't specifically deal with this, does it partially deal with some other type of influenza?
Maybe if it's really, really close, it might. But generally, no. As a matter of fact, there was if you get a novel strain coming in, remember, I think it was 2009, what they called the swine flu? It was a totally different version that wasn't even like any of these of the influenza. And suddenly it was spreading everywhere. Well, of course, nobody knew about that before, so it wasn't in any of the vaccines, so nobody was protected against it. But an interesting fact, in Canada, they did a study because with the Canadian health system up there, they've got a lot of centralized records and were able to do that easily. But those who had had the flu shot that year, which of course did not protect against the swine flu, they were twice as likely to get the swine flu as compared to people who had not got the flu shot that year. They were like only half as likely to get the swine flu. And the thinking is that apparently it's like, okay, so the flu shot, you know, it's got these antigens, in other words, pieces of a virus, and so when they inject it in you, your body makes antibodies against those pieces. So if you get a real virus of that type, hey, it's ready to go after it and attack it and destroy it for you. Well, so your body has basically got these things that says, oh, that's the virus we got to attack. And so you've made up all these antibodies against what was in the flu shot. You've basically sort of hijacked your immune system now to go and fight the enemy. In other words, you've got all of your troops, your army, the Air Force, the Navy, everybody is out there looking for this enemy. And now there's a different enemy. And it's like, well, you've already deployed all your troops. Yeah. Now what do you got left to go fight this? Well, they're already geared up to go fight this. Yeah. Whereas this one that wasn't all geared up to fight what was in the flu shot that year, hey, they're all ready and are ready to build up an attack in the, you know, the normal immunological response, and less likely to, you know, have a problem and more likely to be asymptomatic or not have an issue with it. So, you know, that's one of the, you know, are these shots for ongoing changing viruses really valuable? And of course the question is, what about a vaccine for the coronavirus, the COVID-19 now? Everybody says, yeah, we've got hundreds of different labs around the country that are making vaccines for this new COVID virus. And of course, that would be great to have a vaccine that would work. The question is, will they be able to make one that'll work? Or will it be like the influenza virus that's gonna keep changing, and by 6 months from now, and by the time they get a vaccine out, there'll be enough mutated strains out there that, yeah, we'll vaccinate here, but there'll be some mutated strains that it won't protect against, and we're still going to have flare-ups. You know, like every year we still have the seasonal influenza. Yeah. Will we end up with the seasonal COVID? Maybe. You know, nobody really knows the answer to that yet.
This is very interesting, and I'm glad that you went down this road, Pastor Bohr, because one, this is not your own personal homespun theory. This is out in the scientific community now. You may have gotten to it a little early, given your studies and from where you sit, but it's being spoken of by numbers of people who are realizing that the idea that this was engineered cannot be taken off the table. You may not have hard proof, but you cannot dismiss it either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is an option. You said something a couple of weeks ago that touched my ear. You said this virus has been made very efficient. It is not that deadly as we look at things that are deadly, but it's very highly contagious. It has been made a lot of people are getting it. You can get it very easy. And though there are a lot of people who are asymptomatic, a lot of people are symptomatic, and a fair number of people are dying. So it's been put together in such a way that it does what it does very well.
Especially compared to what it used to be a few years ago, which was the SARS virus.
Yeah.
And the SARS virus was bad, but it was fairly self-contained. I mean, I think we had worldwide a total of 800 people, you know, that died from the SARS virus. Now, with making these modifications to the SARS virus, that it's more, you know, infectious, it's spreading wildly everywhere, and seems like our best efforts can barely slow it down a little bit. And you were way beyond 800 deaths here, you know. I mean, you know, we're in the many tens of thousands and, you know, hundreds of thousands worldwide here. So it's definitely more infectious spreading out
I
there.
want to ask your opinion on something, and it's your opinion, but I suspect it's an educated one, because Germany is beginning to take the seal off of some of this quarantine. France is beginning to take the seal off. Spain is, and there is much talk about doing some things here in the United States. They're talking incremental, but they are talking about definitely do it. In your considered opinion, at this point, are we rushing it a little bit? Can we do that with any amount of safety? Are we trying to push ahead a little too fast?
To really answer that, of course, you're going to have to realize that all epidemics are local. Even though this is a pandemic, what we have here in the Central Valley right now is going to be different than what we have in the Bay Area or what we've got in New York City or what we've got in Peru. The degree of the number of people infected and how badly it's spreading in the community. But we all start the same place with this virus, and that is everybody in the community is susceptible. This is a brand new virus. Nobody came into this being immune to this. So nobody had pre-existing immunity to it. And so it's spreading through the community, widely spreading through the community probably. And some people get extremely sick and die from it, you know, as it attacks their lungs and hearts, and they really aren't able to fight it off. But, you know, as we start to look at that and realize what's going on there, you realize the only way to end this is, when it's this infectious, is to make people immune to it. I mean, ideally, if we had a vaccine day one and we went out and vaccinated everybody, then nobody would get it and this virus would be over. But, you know, we're not going to get a vaccine for a year and a half, and who knows if it'll work then or if it'll already change. So that's down the road, and you're not going to be able to count on it to get through what we're dealing with right now. So the only immunity is going to be what we build up in the community. In other words, people that have been infected and got well, and their body's immune system has antibodies, and they're able to fight it off. And then, of course, the question, well, can we open up this lockdown? Do we have to keep shutting everything down and wearing face masks and staying 6 feet apart? Although some people are now saying it's more like 15 feet, depending on the type of, you know, what you read out there. So it's, and the answer to that is going to vary by the area, because at this point, the only way to get rid of it is for everybody to get it. And it's like, as soon as everybody in the community's had it, then it's over, because nobody else can get it again. So, but the problem with letting everybody get it is a large percentage, or a certain percentage at least, get it really, really bad and are going to die. They're going to need hospital beds, they're going to need ICU beds, they're going to need ventilators as their only hope of survival. And we've only got so many hospital beds and ventilators, and if we don't have enough, we saw this in Italy, and we're starting to see it other places, then what happens? Well, people that could have lived are going to die, and you know, and the doctors are in that position of, well, who gets a ventilator and who doesn't? Or the system, like in Wuhan, just gets overwhelmed and people are turned away because the hospitals are full. Incidentally, I just saw this weekend right now, it is now spreading through Central and South America. Mexico has been hit bad. I think Nicaragua, Peru, Ecuador were mentioned as places where the number of people infected is exceeding the ability of the healthcare system to provide the critical care that's needed. In Mexico City, they were turning away people from the hospitals because they were full. There weren't any more ventilators or ICU beds. And you know, here in this country, we've got a much more robust, developed healthcare system. We've got a lot more hospitals, a lot more doctors, a lot more ICUs, and a lot more ventilators. And with proper, you know, a lot public health planning and governmental, you know, organization, we can shift those resources around. And if it's flaring up in New York, we can push some more resources there, or to New Orleans, or now maybe to San Francisco or wherever, and we have the capacity to handle a lot more infection than, you know, some countries that have a very minimal healthcare system and a very few doctors. And they go into it not really realizing how bad it is and implementing proper protective measures right up front. And, you know, the healthcare workers are your first casualties, and you lose your doctors and nurses. They get sick and die. They're taken out of the picture right there. There's, you know, we see that, you know, in places. And so it can get really bad there. So we don't want to cross that line. You know, then that's where you hear the talk about flattening the curve. We want to slow the burn, but it's like you're not going to be able to stamp out this fire without totally 100% locking down and everybody stays home and nobody does anything. So we're in this sort of partial lockdown where we've got all the essential services open, but everything else is locked down. And well, that's really bad for the economy, and how long can we put up with this? And so to answer your question is, we're going to have to open that up. We're going to have to start letting, you know, things flow through and start opened up. And as long as the healthcare system can handle the burn, it's probably going to be the right way to go. And, you know, and it's how much we open up and what the reaction, and are we suddenly get a second wave, another flare up of cases because we've opened it up too much and it's spreading from person to person now. So the idea is, well, how do we open it up and control the burn without it getting out of control where we don't have the resources to handle the sick cases? And of course, ideally, another piece is in there, if we get medicines that work. Wow, that's another big thing. You know, if the chloroquine or some of the antiretrovirals or something prove to be very effective. You know, those that are doing the studies are still not committing to saying how well that's working or not working. There's anecdotal stuff that says it works, but, you know, how many people are getting well with nothing? You know, and so it's like, if I'd given one of them some, you know, a magic pill and they got better, well, the magic pill would get all the credit. Right. So until you actually do double-blind studies and you actually know the numbers, you don't really know that it's working. And so, you know, those are kind of the open-ended stuff out there.
I asked that because you're the health officer in your county, so if things are going to be opened or remain shut, that would come over your desk, would it not?
The health officer, and the way things are organized, gives the local orders to, you know, close or open, but it's all done under the direction of the state. So the California Department of Public Health really directs things here. The health officers here in the Central Valley, we get on the phone and have conference calls every couple of days where we talk about what are we going to open, what are we not going to open. Yesterday, a big discussion of, well, we need to be opening up some of these, you know, industries here, and well, what kind of, you know, well, the people can't stay that far apart on the assembly line. They're going to do this. Can they wear masks? Well, you know, figuring, okay, what can we do to open things up but still keep down the spread here, you know? What would be the signs which, and there's a lot of discussions, a lot of things, and of course nobody knows the answer. We all make our best guess and put it out, and it's going to be different in different regions. It's going to be depending on how far the infection is out of control. If the infection's burning way out of control right now, well, then you're probably not going to start opening up things on top of that.
Yeah. The problem is the United States has a service economy, which means restaurants, bars, hotels, you know, cruise ships, and so on. And how are you going to open up those? Those are probably more complicated to open than some of the others.
But they're probably some of the first ones you're going to see opening, I suspect. You know, they're going to put in like, well, we can only have so many tables in the restaurant. but, you know, that are spaced at certain distance apart. And, you know, there's just going to be those type of things you're going to see. You know, things won't be the same. There'll be different regulations and little things they will do that may help or may not help, but they're going to try those, all the little things they can do to sort of reduce the spread, but not totally shut down and lock things down, because, you know, that's not, you just can't do this indefinitely, lock everybody up and nobody can do anything. I mean, people have to work, we need their services, we need their products, and you know, these type of things are going to need to move down the road. And they can, and they will, and month by month, you know, more and more people will develop, you know, some degree of immunity to this, and things are going to become, you know, safer. It'll get farther under control, and there'll probably be some new norm on the other side. We may have an ongoing seasonal COVID thing every year, you know.
I wonder whether I have been exposed to the coronavirus. You know, we were in Spain the end of January. We came back early in February to the U.S. So is there any place that you can get a test to find out whether you were exposed or not in this area?
No, there is not. The antibody test is available, it's been developed, it's out there. They've been doing some population-based studies where they'll just test random samples throughout a community of stuff they've got there in the lab. In the Bay Area, their results of that are showing that this may be 80 times more effective than they thought. In other words, they're finding antibodies 80 times more than they would expect from what we know about how many people have, you know, how many reported infections are going on there and how many people have been sick. And we start testing antibodies. Look at all these other people that got antibodies. They had asymptomatic infections, or very minor infections they didn't really think anything of. And so that's the test that we would like to know the answer to. And they have not made that available for individuals yet. So I mean, that'll certainly help us moving into, you know, getting out of the lockdown to find out, oh, hey, I'm immune to it. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. But of course, at this point, we don't even know if having the antibodies makes you immune. You know, maybe next time we can talk a little bit more about that, and about the reoccurrences or reinfections or re-flare-ups. What are the implications there? So
maybe there'll be new light by then.
Indeed, and that's one of the big questions that's coming down the road to face us. Once you've got it, can you get it again? Can you pass it on to someone else? Those are some of the questions that hit us. So there's always much to talk about. We thank you for joining us on Coronavirus Report today, and we hope to see you next time. We've got a lot to tell you. We know you've got a lot of questions. Praise God, we may have just the answer that you need. Bye-bye. We'll see you again soon.